Hey there. Tonight we're diving into the world of Victorian social rules. And let me tell you, the people of that era had some downright peculiar ideas about what counted as proper behavior. Compared to them, your most awkward modern moments will feel like a breeze. Before we start, quick favor, if you're enjoying these stories, hit that like or subscribe. I'd also love to know where you're listening from, so drop a comment with your location and the current time. It never fails to amaze me that folks all over the world are falling asleep to these tales. Alright, let's rewind the clock and head straight into Victorian England. Buckle up, it's going to be quite the experience. So picture this, you've just woken up in London, sometime around 1850. Your eyes flutter open, and instead of your familiar memory foam mattress, you're lying on a narrow iron bed frame. The mattress beneath you isn't soft and cloud-like, it's filled with horsehair, scratchy in places, uneven in others. The chill of the room hits you immediately. Not just cool, truly cold. The fire that had been crackling when you drifted off is now little more than a faint glow of embers, just enough to cast long shadows across the furniture. There's a hulking wardrobe standing guard in one corner, a washstand with a porcelain basin, and a modest dressing table topped with a tiny mirror. From outside comes the rhythmic clatter of iron-rimmed carriage wheels bouncing across cobblestones. Somewhere down the street, a dog barks sharply. And then there's the air, thick with the ever-present scent of coal smoke. In London, it seeps into everything, curling beneath door frames and slipping through window cracks. But mingled with it tonight is something else. A faint whiff of bergamot oil from the perfume bowl resting on your dressing table. Bright, citrusy, sharp. The fashionable fragrance of the day, lingering in the cold night air. The sheets tucked around you are simple cotton, not exactly soft or inviting, but at least they're freshly cleaned. Your nightgown is made of heavy flannel, buttoned all the way up to your chin. In Victorian England, the idea of anyone glimpsing your bare neck or wrists while you slept would have been considered shockingly improper. On the small table beside your bed sits a bell. You reach for it, give it a quick shake, and the chime rings out. Almost instantly, you hear the sound of footsteps climbing the stairs. A moment later, your maid, Mary, steps through the doorway, already fully dressed and composed, even though the hour is painfully early. "Good morning, miss," she greets you with a polite curtsy. "Shall I draw the curtains?" She doesn't bother waiting for your reply before sweeping across the room to the window. With a practiced tug, she pulls back the heavy velvet drapes, and a weak wash of gray daylight spills inside. The window panes are streaked with soot, coated by the endless smoke spewing from London's countless chimneys. Turning back to you, Mary asks briskly, "What would you like to wear today, miss?" She moves to the wardrobe, swinging open its tall doors to reveal row after row of gowns, each one more elaborate, more layered, and more ornate than the last. And this is where your crash course in Victorian society truly begins. Every single thing about your day is dictated by rules: what you wear, the way you speak, how you carry yourself, who you acknowledge, and even when you're allowed to speak to them. In short, your entire existence is bound by the most intricate social code humanity has ever managed to invent. The Victorians were essentially playing life on expert mode, and a single mistake, one wrong gesture, could send you tumbling straight into social disgrace. "You've a morning call with Mrs. Hartley at 11, Mary reminds you, holding up a deep blue day dress for inspection. "And tea with your cousin Emily at 4. Morning calls, by the way, are your next crash course in Victorian etiquette. Despite the name, they're never actually in the morning. They're held between 3 and 5 in the afternoon, and if you dared to call them afternoon calls, people would look at you as though you'd completely lost your senses. And the rules don't stop there. Each visit must last exactly 15 minutes. Not 14. Not 16. 15, to the dot. Overstaying even a minute is considered rude and inconsiderate. Which means you'd better have a pocket watch handy, because timing is everything. Once your schedule is settled, Mary begins dressing you. And trust me, this is not a quick process. First comes the chemise, a plain cotton slip that forms the base layer. Then it's time for the corset. Ah, yes, the corset. Mary wraps it firmly around your waist and begins pulling at the laces. Tighter, you instruct her, recalling that a proper Victorian lady is expected to have a waist so small it can practically be encircled with 2 hands. Yes, miss, Mary replies, tightening the cords until your ribs shift and your lungs can only half expand. Breathing feels like a luxury. But this, apparently, is fashion. Next, she piles on the petticoats. 1 layer. Then another still. 3 in total, each adding more volume and weight to your frame. Over that goes the crinoline, a cage of steel hoops designed to make your skirt balloon outward like the shade of an enormous lamp. Finally, the dress itself is added on top, with its fitted bodice and its extravagant, sweeping skirt. By the end, you're carrying around nearly 15 pounds of fabric and steel. And you're not even finished yet. Mary takes a comb to your hair, pulling it back tightly, smoothing away every stray strand, and pinning it into a strict bun at the nape of your neck. Not a single flyaway permitted. In this world, everything must be neat, everything must be controlled, and above all, everything must be proper. Will you be wearing gloves or mittens today, miss? Mary asks, holding up both options for your inspection. Gloves, you answer immediately, recalling one of the unshakable rules of Victorian society. A proper lady never, under any circumstances, shows her bare hands in public. Ever. Your hands must remain hidden at all times, as though modesty somehow extended to fingertips. It's a peculiar kind of hand-centered propriety, but here, it's law. As Mary slides the gloves onto your fingers, another rule comes to mind: no perfume. Queen Victoria herself had declared the heavy, musky scents of earlier decades vulgar and indecent. Instead, the acceptable practice is to dab a hint of something lighter, something clean. So you touch your handkerchief with the faintest trace of lemon and bergamot oil, enough to smell fresh, but never enough to suggest you're trying to turn heads with a daring, seductive fragrance. At last, fully dressed and polished, you descend the stairs for breakfast. The house around you is already buzzing with activity. Servants hurry through the halls, dusting shelves, sweeping floors, and polishing surfaces until they shine. In the kitchen, the cook, who's been awake since 5, has spent hours preparing the morning meal. In the dining room, your father sits at the head of the long table, his face hidden behind a newspaper. At the other end, your mother is already bent over her writing desk, carefully working through her morning correspondence. Both of them are formally dressed. In Victorian households, the idea of appearing at the breakfast table in anything resembling casual attire would be unthinkable. Good morning, you say politely, sliding into your chair. Your father lowers the edge of his newspaper just far enough to acknowledge you with a curt nod, then promptly raises it again. Public displays of affection, even among close family, are decidedly not the Victorian way. No warm embraces. No quick kiss on the cheek. The meal before you is hearty and plentiful: eggs, bacon, kidneys, toast, porridge. For Victorians, breakfast is often the most substantial meal of the day. But with your corset cinched tight, you can only manage to pick at the food in small, delicate bites. Eating too much, or too quickly, is quite literally impossible. Remember, Jane, your mother says without lifting her eyes from the letter she's writing, Mrs. Hartley's daughter has just become engaged. Be sure to offer your congratulations, but don't ask any questions about the wedding. That would be presumptuous. You nod silently, committing the instruction to memory. This is exactly how Victorian society works, an invisible rule book guiding every interaction. You're expected to acknowledge significant life events, but never probe too deeply. Curiosity, in this world, is considered vulgar. Breakfast ends, and you find yourself with a few free hours before your scheduled morning call. To fill the time, you settle on needlepoint, a safe, suitably feminine pursuit. After all, idle hands are the devil's workshop, and a proper Victorian lady is never supposed to appear idle. You take your seat by the drawing-room window, pulling a piece of linen taut in its hoop and carefully stitching tiny flowers into the fabric. A moment later, your mother joins you, taking up her own embroidery with practiced ease. "I saw Mrs. Fairchild yesterday," she says casually, her tone light, though her words are carefully chosen. "Her son has just returned from university." You keep your eyes fixed firmly on your stitching, though your heartbeat betrays you, quickening at the mention of his name. Thomas Fairchild. You danced with him at a ball last season, just before he left for Oxford. He'd had kind eyes, a gentle smile, and unlike most of the young men you dance with, he managed to avoid stepping on your feet. That alone had set him apart. "How nice," you reply, keeping your voice deliberately neutral, as though the news is of no great importance. Your mother's needle moves steadily through her fabric. "She mentioned he asked after you," she adds, glancing up just long enough to watch your reaction. You feel warmth rising in your cheeks, but you force your expression into calm composure. "Did he? That's very civil of him," you say evenly, allowing nothing more to show. A small smile flickers at the corners of your mother's mouth. She seems satisfied with your restrained response. In this society, showing too much enthusiasm toward a young man, no matter how kind his eyes, would be considered highly improper. Victorian courtship is a strange sort of game, one where the entire point is to act as though you're not playing at all. At exactly 11:15, you prepare yourself for the day's ritual. Bonnet in place, gloves neatly fitted, cloak draped over your shoulders, you and your mother set off toward Mrs. Hartley's home. In your hand, you carry a slim card case filled with visiting cards, those small but vital slips of paper with your name elegantly printed across them. Without them, the tradition of morning calls would be incomplete. Mrs. Hartley lives only a few streets away, but arriving breathless from haste would be unthinkable. Instead, you adopt the proper Victorian lady's pace, measured, deliberate, with small, careful steps. Your back remains straight, your eyes lowered modestly. As you move along, your voluminous skirt sways dramatically, at times threatening to sweep small dogs or unwary children straight off the pavement if they wander too close. Other pedestrians pass by. Men tip their hats politely as they go, and you respond with the faintest of nods. No words, no smiles, and certainly no direct eye contact. In this society, a gentleman would never dream of addressing a lady without a proper introduction, and a lady would never acknowledge a strange man in return. You and your mother reach Mrs. Hartley's front steps precisely on the hour, 11 o'clock sharp. Punctuality here is non-negotiable. To arrive early would suggest a lack of other social obligations. To arrive late would appear careless. Either misstep would mark you as socially inept. The butler answers the door with practiced formality. You present him with 2 visiting cards, one for yourself and one for your mother, which he accepts on a small silver tray. After a dignified pause, he ushers you into the drawing room, where Mrs. Hartley and her daughter, Charlotte, are already waiting. Everyone exchanges curtsies, deep and deliberate. No one embraces. No one kisses cheeks. In this world, even greetings are governed by restraint. In Victorian society, physical contact is reduced to the barest minimum. "How kind of you to call," Mrs. Hartley says warmly, motioning for you to sit. You lower yourself carefully onto a dainty sofa, arranging your layers of fabric with practiced precision. Sitting gracefully while wearing a crinoline is no small feat. The steel hoops beneath your skirt demand that you perch delicately on the very edge of the seat, balancing between comfort and composure. "We were so delighted to hear your happy news," your mother says politely to Charlotte. Charlotte's cheeks flush with a modest blush as she lowers her gaze. "Thank you," she murmurs. "Mr. Edwards is very kind. And that is all." That single sentence is the entire sum of what you will ever learn about Charlotte's engagement in this setting. No stories of how they met, no mention of when the wedding might take place, not even a whisper about whether she's in love. To ask such questions would be considered intrusive. And in Victorian society, one thing is certain: Victorians do not pry. The conversation glides onward to safer, neutral ground. The weather, grey and cloudy, though thankfully not raining. The most recent sermon at church, uplifting in its message, but mercifully not too long. And the musical performance you all attended last week, pleasingly accomplished, but never showy. Everything is discussed in the gentlest, most moderate terms. Strong feelings, bold opinions, those are thought to belong to the lower classes, not polite society. After exactly 15 minutes, no more, no less, your mother gives the smallest, almost invisible nod. It's your signal. The visit is complete. You both rise smoothly. "It was so lovely to see you," Mrs. Hartley says as she stands as well. More curtsies are exchanged, more polite farewells spoken, and then, just as neatly as it began, the ritual ends. Moments later, you are back on the street. Your morning call has been executed with flawless precision, another small victory in the endless game of Victorian etiquette. "That went well," your mother remarks as the two of you walk home. "Charlotte looked well, didn't she?" "Very well," you reply. In the world of Victorian conversation, well is the ultimate compliment, never too effusive, never too personal, always perfectly restrained. Back at home, a light luncheon is served. Afterwards, you devote the afternoon to reading an improving book, something instructive and uplifting, but certainly nothing too romantic or thrilling. Novels that stir the emotions are considered dangerous for young ladies, capable of clouding judgment and encouraging improper fantasies. At 4 o'clock sharp, your cousin Emily arrives for tea. The ritual resembles the morning call in many ways, though it's slightly less formal since she's family. Still, you maintain flawless posture, your voice carefully measured, the topics of conversation kept firmly within the bounds of propriety. Even among relatives, gossip is avoided, and opinions are gently smoothed down until they appear almost bland. When Emily departs, you find yourself with a few quiet hours before dinner. You sit at the piano, practicing for exactly 1 hour, long enough to demonstrate refinement and skill, but never so long as to suggest any unseemly ambition of becoming a professional performer. Music is a ladylike accomplishment, not a career. Dinner is served at 7, a relatively informal affair since no guests are present. Still, the occasion demands a change of clothing. You exchange your day dress for something a touch more elegant, less elaborate than a full evening gown, but still appropriate for the dignity of the family table. In Victorian life, clothing is a language all its own, and each change throughout the day signals your awareness of the precise social context. The conversation at dinner is polite, carefully controlled, but hardly intimate. Your father speaks with your brother about business matters. Your mother discusses the charitable projects that occupy her time. You listen attentively, offering a soft-spoken opinion now and again, but only when someone addresses you directly. Personal revelations, emotional exchanges, those are not the way of the Victorian dining table. After dinner, the family retires to the drawing room. Your father and brother may slip off to the study for brandy and cigars, but such pleasures are not meant for ladies. A Victorian woman never drinks anything stronger than sherry, and smoking is entirely out of the question. Instead, your evening is filled with gentler pursuits, perhaps a turn at the piano to entertain the household, or a return to your embroidery, letting needle and thread occupy your hands. By 10 o'clock, the house is winding down, and it's time for bed. Another day of propriety and restraint has been carried out without misstep. Upstairs, Mary helps you undress, peeling away each heavy layer of fabric until, at last, she loosens the corset. The moment it slips free, you draw in a deep breath, your lungs grateful for the space they've been denied all day. "Will you need anything else, miss?" Mary asks as she buttons you into your nightgown. No, thank you, Mary, you reply softly, settling into the cool sheets with a small sigh of relief. She gives you a neat curtsy before leaving the room, taking the oil lamp with her. Darkness settles in, broken only by the faint red glow of the banked fire and the grate. You lie there, replaying the day in your mind. So many rules, so much careful restraint. It's exhausting to live beneath such constant pressure, and yet, there is also a strange comfort in knowing that every moment has its script, every interaction its proper course. As sleep begins to pull at you, your thoughts wander to tomorrow. A formal dinner party awaits, which means another maze of etiquette to navigate, another set of rules to memorize. But that is a challenge for the morning. For now, you allow the distant sounds of the city, carriage wheels on cobblestones, a dog barking somewhere far off, to lull you into dreams. And just before sleep claims you, one final image drifts through your mind: Thomas Fairchild, his kind eyes lingering in memory. In a world bound so tightly by restraint and convention, even the smallest flicker of connection feels immeasurably significant. You can't help but wonder if you'll see Thomas soon, and what complicated choreography of social rules you'll be forced to perform if you do. Outside, the fog drifts in from the Thames, settling over the city like a damp gray blanket. Gas lamps glow faintly through the mist, casting blurred halos of light across the cobblestones. Somewhere in the distance, the wheels of a carriage rattle and clatter over the uneven street. A night watchman calls out the hour, his voice echoing through the haze. And behind the respectable facades of countless London houses, families lie in their beds, their lives bound by propriety, their very dreams shaped by the strict rules of Victorian society. Morning comes quietly, heralded by the sound of Mary sweeping back your curtains once more. The pale winter sun strains to break through the fog, its light dim and weary against the ever-present London haze. "Good morning, miss," Mary says as she sets a steaming cup of hot chocolate on your bedside table. "It's going to be a busy day." You sit up, sipping the warm chocolate while she lays out your morning dress. Today is no ordinary day. Tonight, you'll attend a formal dinner party at the Fairchilds' home. Yes, those Fairchilds. Which means Thomas will be there. The morning passes in a blur of preparation. Your mother insists you spend 2 full hours at the piano instead of your usual one. "The Fairchilds may ask you to play," she reminds you. "Mrs. Fairchild mentioned their new pianoforte. It would be unthinkably rude to refuse." Another rule carved into the endless list: never decline a direct request to display your accomplishments. But at the same time, never seem too eager to show off. Always balance grace with humility. After luncheon, you and your mother take a light walk through the nearby park. The air is sharp with winter chill, and the fog clings to the bare branches of the trees. Even here, in this moment of supposed leisure, the rules still follow you, shaping your steps and your posture, guiding what may and may not be said. The crisp winter air feels almost refreshing compared to the haze inside most London homes, where coal fires leave every room coated in a faint layer of soot. Along the park pathways, ladies stroll arm in arm, offering polite nods to acquaintances. Gentlemen lift their hats in brief, practice gestures as they pass. "Remember," your mother says softly as you walk, "at dinner you'll be seated according to rank. Do not appear surprised by your placement, whatever it may be." You nod, silently rehearsing the lesson. The Victorian dinner table is, in truth, less a place of leisure than a battlefield of hierarchy. The most distinguished gentleman is always placed at the hostess's right hand, while the most important lady sits to the right of the host. From there, the seating descends step by step, each guest's position a clear reflection of their social standing. To find yourself near the bottom of the table is no accident. It is a deliberate signal of where you rank in the invisible order. Back at home, preparations for the evening commence in earnest. A formal dinner party demands nothing less than your finest presentation. Mary prepares a bath, scenting the water with a few precious drops of rose oil. The bathroom itself is chilly, despite the small fire struggling in the grate. You immerse yourself quickly, shivering as you step out onto the cold floorboards, eager to escape the draft. Then the true ordeal begins, dressing. Tonight requires full evening attire. Your corset is drawn tighter than usual, squeezing your waist until breathing feels shallow and measured. The crinoline you step into is broader, forcing your skirts to flare outward in a grand display. Over it, Mary fastens your gown, a pale blue silk trimmed with delicate lace. Its neckline is lower than your daytime dresses, revealing the gentle line of your collarbones and the faintest suggestion of shoulder. For a respectable unmarried woman, this is the maximum exposure propriety will allow. Mary's hands are steady as she arranges your hair into an elaborate style, weaving small silk flowers among carefully placed curls. Finally, she dusts your face with a fine layer of rice powder, softening your features and giving you the fashionable pale complexion so admired in society. No rouge, of course. In Victorian society, only actresses and women of questionable virtue dare to wear obvious makeup. Respectable ladies must appear naturally flawless, or at least give the impression of it. "You look beautiful, miss," Mary says softly, stepping back to admire her work. You glance at the mirror and hardly recognize the reflection staring back. Every detail is in place. You look exactly as a proper Victorian young lady should, poised, composed, elegant. Your waist has been drawn to an impossibly narrow span. Your skirt extends outward in a sweeping, exaggerated bell. Fashion may be uncomfortable, sometimes even painful, but fashion is also unquestionable. It must be obeyed. Tonight, your father has arranged for a carriage to convey you to the Fairchilds. Walking would be unthinkable on such a cold night, not to mention disastrous for your carefully styled hair and gown. Besides, arriving by carriage is itself a statement, an unmistakable sign of your family's respectability and prosperity. The carriage rattles through London's lamplit streets until at last it draws up before a grand townhouse in one of the city's most fashionable neighborhoods. Every window glows with golden light, promising warmth and company within. A footman in full livery steps smartly forward, opening the carriage door and offering his hand as you descend. Inside, the Fairchild home is warm and dazzlingly bright. Gas lamps, the very latest in modern convenience, bathe the entrance hall in steady light. A maid takes your cloak, revealing your evening finery, while the butler prepares to announce your arrival. His voice carries clearly into the drawing room. "Mr. and Mrs. Wilson, and Miss Jane Wilson." Dozens of faces turn toward you at once. Heat rises in your cheeks, but you keep your expression composed, lowering into a perfectly measured curtsy before Mr. and Mrs. Fairchild. And then you see him. Standing just behind his mother is Thomas. He is taller than you remember, his evening clothes sharp and precise, his shoulders broad beneath the tailored cut of his coat. He inclines himself in a bow, executed flawlessly. Not so deep that it would seem insincere, and not so slight that it would verge on disrespectful. It is, like everything in this world, exactly as it ought to be. "Miss Wilson," Thomas says, his voice deeper than you remember. "How very pleasant to see you again." "Mr. Fairchild," you reply, matching his composure, your tone carefully measured. "I trust Oxford agrees with you." A flicker of a smile touches his lips. "It does, thank you. Though," his eyes catch yours briefly, "London has attractions Oxford cannot claim. Is that flirting? Perhaps. With Victorian men, it is nearly impossible to tell. Compliments are hidden beneath layers of restraint, wrapped so tightly in propriety that their meaning must be guessed at rather than spoken plainly. Before you can reflect further, more guests begin to arrive, and the drawing-room hums with the soft murmur of polite conversation. Everyone remains standing, for to sit before dinner is announced would suggest eagerness for food, a vulgar display of appetite that no respectable person would risk. Across the room, you spot Charlotte Hartley with her fiancé, Mr. Edwards. They stand side by side, but at a carefully respectable distance. No stolen glances, no whispered words, and certainly no touching. To the casual observer, their engagement might not even be apparent. At last, the butler appears and announces in his resonant voice that dinner is served. What follows is a dance every bit as choreographed as a formal ball, the procession into the dining room. Mr. Fairchild, as host, offers his arm to the highest-ranking lady present. The most important gentleman escorts the hostess. Each subsequent pair arranges itself according to social rank, creating a carefully ordered chain of couples. When your turn comes, you find yourself paired with a middle-aged gentleman you've never met before. Politeness demands you smile and accept without hesitation. Out of the corner of your eye, you notice Thomas leading an elderly lady adorned with an extraordinary turban of layered fabric, guiding her with perfect courtesy. The dining room itself is dazzling. Crystal sparkles beneath the glow of candlelight. Polished silver catches the light like a mirror, while rows of fine china gleam pristinely against the white tablecloth. At each place setting, an intimidating arrangement of utensils fans outward in neat order, forks, knives, and spoons for every imaginable course. The sight alone is enough to make you catch your breath. Before you even lift your napkin, the table itself presents its first challenge. Fish forks, soup spoons, dessert spoons, an array of knives in varying sizes, each utensil precisely placed for its intended course. To select the wrong one would be nothing short of a social disaster. Your seat is about halfway down the table. Not at the bottom, thank goodness. That would signal unimportance. But not near the head either. A middle position. Respectable, though not distinguished. Thomas sits on the opposite side, several places away, close enough for you to glimpse him but far enough that direct conversation is impossible. In Victorian dining, you speak only with the gentleman seated immediately to your left and right. Addressing someone across the table would be a breach of etiquette. The gentleman to your right inclines politely toward you. "I believe you're acquainted with my nephew, Miss Wilson. Charles Pembroke. If I'm not mistaken, the two of you danced at Lady Hamilton's ball last season. You search your memory. Yes, you had danced with a Mr. Pembroke. A painfully awkward quadrille marked by 3 missteps on your poor toes and a monologue delivered entirely about his horse. Yes, indeed. You answer smoothly, masking the memory behind a pleasant smile. Mr. Pembroke is an accomplished dancer. A harmless white lie, offered in the name of social harmony. The meal unfolds as a symphony of courses, steaming bowls of soup, delicately presented fish, hearty cuts of meat, rich game, and finally sweets for dessert. Each stage arrives with its own choreography of serving rituals and its own set of utensils. You follow the rules precisely, taking only small, graceful bites, chewing softly. A lady must never appear to eat with enthusiasm, no matter how empty her stomach might feel. The conversation flows in the same restrained rhythm. No politics, no religion, no discussions of money or anything remotely personal. Those topics are forbidden. Instead, the table buzzes with polite commentary on recent theatrical performances, the latest exhibitions at the Royal Academy, the endlessly variable English weather, and genteel travels to approved destinations such as Italy or France. Every so often, you feel eyes on you. Glancing up, you catch Thomas watching from across the flickering candlelight. For the briefest moment, your gazes lock. Then, almost immediately, he looks away. In this carefully ordered world, even something as simple as eye contact can carry the weight of a secret. After dessert comes one of the most strictly gendered rituals of the Victorian dinner party. Mrs. Fairchild glances toward the highest-ranking lady at the table and gracefully rises to her feet. This is the unspoken signal. One by one, every woman follows, leaving the gentlemen behind to enjoy their port and cigars. You join the quiet procession back to the drawing room, skirts swishing as the women file out. The practice serves several purposes in Victorian society. It allows the men to remain behind, speaking freely on so-called male subjects, like politics, business, or estate matters. It provides the women with a discreet opportunity to use the chamber pot if necessary, no small relief, considering the cumbersome layers of fabric and hoops that make frequent trips almost impossible. And perhaps most importantly, it sustains the illusion that ladies are far too delicate to be exposed to smoke and strong drink. In the drawing room, the women settle into small conversational circles. Mrs. Fairchild makes a point of seating Charlotte beside her fiancé's mother, a carefully orchestrated gesture of approval for the forthcoming marriage. Then Mrs. Fairchild turns her attention to you. "Will you play for us, Miss Wilson?" she asks, gesturing toward the gleaming pianoforte in the corner. "Ah, the moment you've been dreading." Refusal is out of the question, yet eagerness would be just as improper. The balance must be struck perfectly. "If you wish it, Mrs. Fairchild," you answer modestly, lowering your gaze. "Though I'm sure there are others present who are far more accomplished." "Nonsense," she replies with a firm smile. "We've all heard of your talent. And that settles it." You rise, gliding toward the piano. With some difficulty, you maneuver your wide skirts onto the narrow bench and arrange yourself with as much grace as possible. Then your hands find the keys. You choose a piece by Mozart, challenging enough to demonstrate skill, but not so dramatic as to seem like you're showing off. Your fingers move with precision, your posture remains perfectly straight, and your expression softens into a composed, polite smile. To play well without appearing to enjoy yourself too much, that is the true art. No grimacing, no swaying with the melody. Such gestures would be judged as overly emotional. A proper Victorian lady plays with grace, not with abandon. When the final notes fade, the ladies offer polite applause, just enough to signal approval without excess. You acknowledge them with a modest nod before returning to your seat. Your hands are trembling ever so slightly, but no one notices. To betray nerves would be unthinkable. Composure is everything. About half an hour later, the gentlemen rejoin the gathering. The faint scent of cigars clings to their coats, mingled with the richness of port wine. Some of the older men sink into chairs, content to remain at ease, while the younger ones drift politely among the ladies. Thomas approaches slowly, careful to stop along the way and exchange pleasantries with others so as not to appear too eager. At last he reaches your side. "I enjoyed your performance, Miss Wilson," he says, his voice low and courteous. "Mozart, was it not?" "Yes," you reply. "His sonata in C major." You play with great feeling. He continues, and then, almost as if to shield himself from his own candor, he quickly adds, but always with appropriate restraint, of course. A small smile curves your lips. "Thank you, Mr. Fairchild." After a pause, you venture, "I understand you are studying classics at Oxford?" And just like that, the Victorian version of flirtation begins, a careful, deliberate exchange over neutral topics, where true interest is layered beneath polite restraint. You speak of books, never ones too romantic. Of music, never pieces too stirring. Of art, never works too daring or avant-garde. Beneath the surface, though, each word is a quiet test. Is he thoughtful? Is she intelligent? Could our temperaments match? Out of the corner of your eye you notice Mrs. Fairchild watching the two of you with clear satisfaction. In this world, mothers are the master planners of matches, quietly arranging futures one polite conversation at a time. There is little doubt in your mind that Mrs. Fairchild extended tonight's invitation with a purpose, to place you and Thomas in one another's path. What feels like only a handful of minutes slips by, though in truth nearly half an hour has passed, before Thomas rises reluctantly. "I should pay my respects to Miss Hartley and offer congratulations on her engagement," he says. "Of course," you reply smoothly, concealing the flicker of disappointment. "It was pleasant conversing with you, Mr. Fairchild." He bows just slightly, his gaze steady. "The pleasure was mine, Miss Wilson." Then he turns and moves away. Almost at once, your mother drifts to your side. "He seems quite attentive," she murmurs. "Does he?" You answer with practiced nonchalance, pretending you hadn't noticed a thing. Your mother's eyes narrow with knowing. "Do not appear too interested, Jane. Nothing sends a suitor running faster than an eager young lady." The evening unfolds in its orderly rhythm, more music, a few genteel card games, and a continuous circulation of guests from group to group. Everyone speaks to everyone, never lingering too long in one conversation. The illusion of perfect harmony must always be maintained. At precisely 11 o'clock, the first guests rise to take their leave. This is the signal. Now others may depart without seeming rude. Even the end of a party, in Victorian society, is dictated by its own set of rules. Your father catches your mother's eye. She inclines her head almost imperceptibly. It is time. Together, you make your farewells to the hosts, offering thanks for their gracious hospitality. Thomas stands nearby. He bows once more, his voice low and measured. "Until we meet again, Miss Wilson." "Good evening, Mr. Fairchild," you reply, keeping your tone carefully composed, betraying nothing of the thoughts stirring beneath. Outside, the chill night air greets you. Your carriage waits, its lanterns glowing faintly in the fog, ready to carry you home. As you settle into the cushioned seat of the carriage, you finally allow yourself the smallest sigh of relief. The evening has gone well, no errors in etiquette, no slips of the tongue, and Thomas had seemed attentive, perhaps even genuinely interested. "A successful evening," your father declares as the carriage jolts forward into the foggy London night. From him, this counts as rare and significant praise. "Indeed," your mother agrees. "Mrs. Fairchild mentioned they're hosting a small musical evening next week. We are to expect an invitation." Your heart gives a quick, involuntary flutter. Another chance to see Thomas. Back at home, the night's careful performance is dismantled piece by piece. Mary helps you undress, gently lifting the pale silk gown from your shoulders and hanging it with precision. She tucks away your jewelry, then begins removing the pins from your elaborately arranged hair. One by one, the curls collapse until your hair tumbles freely down your back. "Did you enjoy yourself, miss?" Mary asks, brushing through the strands with steady strokes. "It was a pleasant evening," you reply with practiced composure, even here in the privacy of your own room. Servants observe everything, and gossip flows as freely below stairs as conversation does above. A single hint of enthusiasm over Thomas could, by tomorrow, find its way back to the Fairchild household. Best, then, to remain unreadable. When Mary departs, you linger at your dressing table, studying the reflection that stares back from the mirror. Outwardly you appear calm, composed, every inch the proper young lady. But behind that mask, your mind is racing. Did Thomas truly seek you out with intention, or was it simple politeness? What did his mother's watchful smile mean? Will he call, or must you wait for the musical evening to learn his feelings? Courtship in the Victorian era is a maddening game. It's like playing chess while blindfolded, every gesture a move, every silence a strategy. And the stakes could not be higher. Your entire future happiness depends on making the right match. You drift toward the window, parting the curtain just enough to peer out into the fog-drenched London night. Gas lamps glow faintly in the mist, their light diffused into golden halos. A lone hansom cab rattles over the cobblestones, the horse's hooves echoing in the stillness. Somewhere out there, you imagine, Thomas Fairchild might also be thinking of you. But in a world of such rigid propriety and carefully hidden feelings, how could you ever know for certain? All you can do is wait, and wonder what the next social encounter will bring, and what new rules you'll be forced to navigate. As it turns out, the next encounter comes far sooner than you expect, less than a day later. You are seated in the front parlor, pretending to read an improving book on botany. though the words blur as you half-heartedly turn the pages. Suddenly Mary appears in the doorway. "Mr. Thomas Fairchild is here, miss," she announces. "He wishes to know if you and your mother are receiving visitors." Your heart gives a startled leap, but outwardly you remain perfectly composed. "Please inform him that we are, Mary, and fetch my mother at once." A proper Victorian young lady is never left alone with a gentleman caller. Not for a moment. Your mother's presence is required throughout the entire visit. Even her stepping out of the room for a single minute would invite scandal. Mary curtsies and disappears. You have perhaps 30 seconds to prepare yourself. Rising quickly, you glance into the small mirror above the fireplace. You smooth your hair, straighten your posture, and reclaim your seat, arranging the book in your hands to give the appearance of natural, effortless occupation. The door opens. And there he is. Thomas steps into the room, looking even more striking in the clear light of day. His morning attire is impeccable. A dark, perfectly tailored coat, a neatly tied cravat, polished boots that gleam. He carries his top hat and gloves in one hand, his manner calm yet purposeful. A gentleman always removes his hat upon entering a home, but etiquette dictates he keeps his gloves on until seated. "Miss Wilson," Thomas says with a courteous bow. "I hope I find you well this morning." "Quite well, thank you, Mr. Fairchild," you reply, setting your book neatly aside. With a graceful gesture toward a nearby chair, you add, "Please be seated. My mother will join us momentarily." He takes the offered seat, slipping off his gloves at last and tucking them carefully inside his hat, a small but unmistakable sign of settling in. "I very much enjoyed the evening at your parents' home last night," you remark, your tone warm yet measured, careful not to drift into too much enthusiasm. "As did I," he answers smoothly. "My mother was particularly impressed by your musical performance." Before you can respond, the door opens and your mother enters the room. At once, Thomas rises to his feet. A gentleman must always stand when a lady enters, regardless of how many times he has already greeted her. "Mr. Fairchild," your mother says pleasantly, her expression alight with welcome. What a delightful surprise. Thomas bows again, ever proper. "Mrs. Wilson, I trust I'm not intruding at an inconvenient hour?" "Not at all," your mother assures him as she settles gracefully onto the sofa beside you. "And now you realize the true dance begins." "I've come to extend an invitation," Thomas says. "My mother is hosting a small musical evening next Tuesday, and she very much hopes that Miss Wilson, and both of you, of course, will be able to attend." Ah, so that is his purpose. Not merely to see you, but to act as his mother's messenger. Yet even so, he could have sent a servant with a neatly penned card. The fact that he has come himself carries meaning. "How kind," your mother replies smoothly. "We would be delighted to accept." "Excellent," Thomas says, his eyes flickering briefly to yours. "My mother also wished me to add that she would be most grateful if Miss Wilson might consider performing. Your rendition of Mozart last night was much admired." Thomas continues. And suddenly it all becomes clear. Mrs. Fairchild's invitation isn't only about music. She wants to present you to her circle, to let others see you, weigh you, evaluate you. You're not simply a guest, you're being measured as a potential daughter-in-law. "I would be happy to play," you say modestly, lowering your gaze. "Though I'm certain your mother has engaged musicians far more accomplished than I." Thomas shakes his head, his tone firmer than before. "None that I'm aware of. Your talent would be the highlight of the evening." A compliment. Direct, unmistakable. In Victorian terms, it borders on the scandalous. Before you can respond, your mother interjects smoothly, as though to preserve the propriety of the moment. "My daughter practices diligently, Mr. Fairchild. We are grateful for the opportunity to share the fruits of her work." From there, the conversation drifts into safe, familiar channels, mutual acquaintances, recent engagements, upcoming social events. Thomas is careful to direct most of his words toward your mother, only occasionally allowing his gaze to meet yours. That is the proper form. Anything else would risk impropriety. And then, right on schedule, 15 minutes, the exact prescribed length of a morning call, Thomas rises. "I've taken enough of your time, Mrs. Wilson." "Miss Wilson." He inclines his head. "I shall convey your acceptance to my mother. She will be most pleased." Your mother rings the bell, and Mary appears at once to see him out. Thomas bows to you both, his eyes resting on you for just a moment longer than etiquette allows, before he follows Mary into the hall. When the door closes behind him, silence lingers for a beat. Then your mother turns to you with a faint but unmistakably satisfied expression. "Well," she says, "it seems the Fairchilds have taken an interest in you." You lower your eyes, striving to appear only politely pleased. "Mrs. Fairchild is very kind to include us in her musical evening," you answer, your voice composed. But inside, your heart is racing. Your mother gives you a pointed look. "It wasn't Mrs. Fairchild who just called on us, was it?" Before you can answer, the bell rings again. Mary reappears only moments later. "Miss Charlotte Hartley and Mrs. Hartley," she announces. "More visitors. The morning call circuit is clearly in full swing." Charlotte sweeps into the room with her mother, both dressed in the very height of fashion. Charlotte herself is glowing. Engagement seems to suit her perfectly. After the requisite curtsies and polite greetings, Charlotte leans a little closer, her eyes bright with excitement. "Have you heard about Mrs. Pembroke?" she whispers. Your mother arches an eyebrow. "What about her?" Mrs. Hartley lets out a disapproving cluck. "It's rather shocking. She was seen driving in the park with Mr. Foster, alone, in his carriage." A ripple of surprise passes through the room. Mrs. Pembroke is married. Mr. Foster is a bachelor with a notorious reputation for flirtation. To be alone together in a carriage is practically a public announcement of an affair. "Perhaps there was a footman present," your mother offers, ever charitable, always eager to think the best of people. Mrs. Hartley shakes her head firmly. "Completely alone. My cousin's wife saw them herself." And there it is, the anatomy of scandal in Victorian London. One careless carriage ride, a few sharp-eyed witnesses, and whispers begin to circulate. For a woman, that can be enough to unravel everything. A ruined reputation, exclusion from polite society, a life transformed into exile. For a man, though, the consequences are far lighter. Mr. Foster may endure a few raised eyebrows at his club, perhaps a joke at his expense, but little more. The double standard of 1850 is alive and well. The subject shifts soon after, and attention turns back to Charlotte. Her wedding plans are moving along quickly, the date set for just 3 months hence. She glows even brighter as she speaks of it, every word another reminder of how different the rules can feel when fortune favors you. Charlotte chatters happily about her trousseau being prepared, and how the wedding breakfast will be held at the Hartleys' home following the church ceremony. Watching her glow with genuine excitement, you feel something stir within yourself, not jealousy exactly, but anticipation. Could this be you in the near future, planning your own wedding to Thomas Fairchild? Or are you reading far too much into what might be nothing more than a polite social call? When the Hartleys depart, you have scarcely an hour before your next obligation, a charity committee meeting at the vicarage. Ladies of good families are expected to dedicate themselves to such causes, directing their energies into respectable, good works for the poor and sick. It is considered the ideal outlet for feminine compassion. The meeting itself is tedious but necessary. A dozen well-dressed women gather in the chilly parish room, speaking in solemn tones about the needs of the less fortunate. Winter blankets must be organized, soup kitchens supplied, clothing collected. The vicar's wife presides with her notebook in hand, assigning duties with brisk efficiency. You volunteer to collect clothing donations from several households. A worthy task that also offers the added benefit of making your morning call seem purposeful. Afterwards, you walk home in company with 2 other young ladies from the neighborhood. Inevitably, the conversation drifts where it always seems to, toward engagements and eligible young men. "Did you hear that Thomas Fairchild is back from Oxford?" asks Emma Parker, her tone carefully casual, though not quite casual enough. "Yes, I believe I heard that," you reply evenly, willing your voice to remain neutral despite the sudden tightness in your chest. Emma has long made no secret of her interest in Thomas. "My mother says Mrs. Fairchild is hosting a musical evening next week," Emma continues, her eyes bright. "We've been invited. Will you be attending?" Emma asks. "Yes, we received an invitation as well," you answer smoothly, though you carefully leave out the detail that it was Thomas himself who delivered it. Emma's smile falters just slightly, the corners of her mouth tightening. "How delightful! Perhaps you'll favor us with some music? You've always been so gifted at the piano." You nod, admitting, "Mrs. Fairchild did request a performance." At that, Emma's companion, Sarah, adds her own comment. "Thomas has always had an ear for music. I recall him turning pages for the pianist at the Johnsons' ball last season." The meaning beneath their words is unmistakable. Both young women clearly see Thomas Fairchild as a potential suitor. In Victorian London, competition for a well-placed bachelor is ruthless, especially for one as handsome and socially secure as Thomas. By the time you return home, you're utterly drained from holding yourself together. The endless performance required by society's rigid rules wears on you. Every phrase, every fleeting glance, even the smallest movement of your hands must be carefully measured. There's barely time to change before dinner, another gown, a new hairstyle, before you join your family at the table. Tonight it's only the 4 of you, your parents, your brother James, and yourself. James is in excellent spirits. He's spent the day at his club, surrounded by other well-born young men. Unlike you, he lives with freedoms that Victorian society reserves exclusively for men. He can slip in and out as he pleases, engage in sports, debate politics and business, even travel unchaperoned. "I ran into Thomas Fairchild at the club today," James remarks casually while slicing into his roast beef. You lower your gaze to your plate and take a delicate bite of potato, careful not to betray the quickening of your thoughts. "Did you now?" your father asks, nodding with approval. "The Fairchilds are an old family. Wealth, reputation, everything in order. Thomas said he stopped by here earlier." James continues, shooting you a knowing glance. "Something about delivering an invitation for one of his mother's musical gatherings." "Yes, he called on us this morning." Your mother confirms. "Such a proper young gentleman." James can't resist grinning. "And he asked quite a few questions about you, Jane." Your head lifts before you can stop yourself, curiosity betraying you. "Did he really?" "Oh yes," James teases. "Wanted to know if you're fond of riding, which books you enjoy, whether you like art exhibitions, things of that nature." The implication is clear. Thomas isn't simply making polite conversation. He's collecting details, trying to discover if the 2 of you share common interests. In today's terms, it's not far from browsing someone's dating profile. Your mother gives James a sharp, warning glance that says don't tease your sister. Still, you can tell she's secretly pleased. A connection with the Fairchilds would be a triumph. Thomas is, after all, the eldest son, destined to inherit both his father's banking empire and a considerable fortune. And on top of that, he seems to be genuinely kind, something not every Victorian bride could hope for in a husband. After dinner, James and your father retire to the study for their port and cigars, while you follow your mother into the drawing room. Another quiet evening of needlework and soft conversation stretches ahead. "If Thomas Fairchild continues to show interest," your mother remarks as she threads her needle, "we really should think about your wardrobe. That blue silk gown is very pretty." But you'll need something new for the musical evening. Her words are more than fashion advice. They're her way of telling you she approves of Thomas as a suitor. New dresses aren't something one orders lightly, considering the cost. Perhaps the dressmaker could come tomorrow. You suggest, doing your best to sound only politely interested rather than eager. Your mother nods thoughtfully. I'll send a note first thing in the morning. The days that follow pass in a whirlwind of preparations for the upcoming musical evening. A pale green silk gown is chosen and stitched with care, its soft shade designed to highlight the color of your eyes. You spend long hours at the piano, practicing tirelessly until your fingers ache, finally settling on a piece that is graceful yet not ostentatious, Mendelssohn's Songs Without Words. Then, on the very morning of the event, something unexpected arrives. Mary appears at your door carrying a small parcel wrapped neatly in brown paper. "This just came for you, miss," she announces. "Delivered by the Fairchild's footman." Your hands tremble slightly as you peel back the wrapping. Inside rests a slim volume of poetry, Tennyson's latest work. A small card is tucked between the pages, the handwriting strong and unmistakably masculine. "Miss Wilson, I thought you might enjoy these verses. The one marked on page 43 reminded me of your playing. Respectfully, T. Fairchild." With quickened breath, you turn immediately to the page. There, a poem on the power of music awaits you, with a single delicate line marked in pencil. The heart of the listener is moved by the skilled hands of the player. Mary lingers, watching your reaction with open curiosity. "It's just a book of poetry," you remark lightly, as though such gifts arrive from gentlemen every day. "From Mr. Fairchild," Mary replies with a smile. "Very kind of him, miss." Her knowing look says more than words ever could. Servants, after all, are often aware of household secrets long before their masters admit them. You slip the book quickly into a drawer. Victorian propriety demands that such tokens remain hidden, unspoken of, as though they had never been given at all. Strictly speaking, gifts exchanged between unmarried men and women are forbidden unless an engagement has already been announced. By sending you this book, Thomas has bent the rules, though only slightly. To acknowledge it openly would be a direct breach of propriety. Yet alone in your room, you allow yourself a moment of rebellion. You clutch the little volume to your chest, savoring the secret thrill that no respectable Victorian lady is supposed to show. There can be no doubt now, Thomas Fairchild is pursuing you. That evening, your family arrives at the Fairchild residence precisely on time. To arrive early would suggest overeagerness. To come late would be discourteous. Punctuality is its own form of etiquette. Your new green silk gown whispers with every step as you descend from the carriage, the crinoline beneath shaping it into a perfect bell. Inside, the Fairchild drawing room is already bustling with guests. Your eyes instinctively sweep the crowd until they find Thomas. He's speaking with an elderly gentleman, but the moment he notices your entrance, his gaze flicks toward you. His expression stays appropriately reserved, yet his eyes brighten in a way that cannot be mistaken. Mrs. Fairchild welcomes you warmly, her praise both flattering and strategic. She admires your gown and thanks you in advance for lending your music to the evening. With gentle insistence, she guides you toward a circle of young ladies, among them, unfortunately, Emma Parker. Emma is dressed in a gown nearly identical in color to your own, though the cut and fabric lack the refinement of yours. She spots the similarity at once and forces a tight smile. "What a coincidence, Miss Wilson," she remarks. "It seems we had the same thought about what color to wear tonight." What she truly means, of course, is something else entirely. We are both vying for Thomas Fairchild's attention, and we both know it. The rivalry is alive and well. The evening's musical program opens with a professional soprano filling the room with soaring Italian arias. After her, a gentleman takes up the violin, his bow dancing across the strings with practiced grace. You are scheduled as the third performer, a position considered ideal. Not the first, which might mark you as the least significant, and not the last, which would burden you with undue expectation. As you rise and move toward the piano, Thomas suddenly steps forward. "May I turn the pages for you, Miss Wilson?" he asks. The offer is far from casual. Page turning places him directly at your side, closer than propriety usually allows between an unmarried man and woman. And because it happens in full view of the guests, everyone present will take note of his attentiveness. "Thank you, Mr. Fairchild," you reply, forcing your voice to remain calm even as your heart races. "That would be most helpful." You arrange yourself at the piano, smoothing your voluminous skirts until they fall properly around you. Thomas positions himself close enough that the faint scent of his cologne reaches you, sandalwood layered with a hint of citrus. You set the sheet music on the stand, though in truth you've long since memorized the piece. Still, the pages give Thomas a reason to remain at your side. Drawing a steadying breath, you let your fingers glide onto the keys. The Mendelssohn piece flows out in gentle, lyrical lines, romantic enough to move the audience, yet restrained enough to remain proper for the setting. You are acutely conscious of Thomas, standing poised beside you, turning each page at precisely the right moment. Once, his hand brushes against yours by accident. The touch is fleeting, but it surges through you like a spark of lightning. Still, your playing never falters. When the final notes fade, the applause that follows is warm and generous. Thomas immediately extends his hand, helping you rise gracefully from the bench, the gesture as gallant as it is intimate. Another small liberty, another gesture that doesn't escape the sharp eyes of the assembled crowd. "Beautifully played," Thomas murmurs as he escorts you back to your seat. "Thank you for your assistance," you reply softly, your words little more than a whisper. Mrs. Fairchild beams with satisfaction, her pride unmistakable. Mr. Fairchild himself gives his son a brief, approving nod. Across the room, Emma Parker looks as though she's just bitten into something sour. The courtship dance continues, measured, deliberate, each step governed by unspoken rules. Once the performances conclude, refreshments are brought out. Thomas finds an opportunity to bring you a glass of punch, managing the task so smoothly it draws no undue notice. He does not linger to chat, that would be too conspicuous, but instead moves on to greet others. Even so, in a society where every action is carefully weighed, the gesture is far from meaningless. As the evening wears on, your gaze drifts toward the fireplace, where Thomas's father is locked in serious discussion with your own. Their expressions are intent, voices low. Business, perhaps, or something with greater consequence. Your mother quietly steps to your side, following your line of sight. "Your father is quite impressed with the Fairchild banking ventures," she murmurs. "He's even considering an investment." But there is something in her tone, a faint undertone that suggests more than money is at stake. The Victorians are nothing if not practical. If two families are considering a union by marriage, why not strengthen the alliance with business as well? The evening gradually draws to a close. Guests begin their farewells, thanking the Fairchilds for hosting such a fine musical program. Cloaks and gloves are collected as your family prepares to depart. As you wait in the entrance hall for the carriage to be brought around, Thomas approaches once more, his timing deliberate. "Miss Wilson," Thomas begins formally, his voice measured. "Might I have the honor of calling on you tomorrow afternoon? There's an exhibition at the Royal Academy that I thought you might enjoy." "With your parents' permission, of course," he adds quickly, his eyes flicking respectfully towards your father. "This is it, the first true step. Not a proposal, but unmistakably a declaration of intention. In the language of Victorian society, Thomas is asking permission to court you." Your father's expression shows quiet satisfaction, though he maintains the proper air of dignity. "We would be honored to receive you, Mr. Fairchild. Shall we say 2 o'clock? 2 o'clock would be perfect, sir," Thomas answers, the relief in his tone impossible to hide. He turns back to you. "Until tomorrow, Miss Wilson. Until tomorrow, Mr. Fairchild. You reply, your voice calm, betraying none of the excitement thrumming beneath your composed exterior. Outside, the family carriage waits. Thomas offers his hand as you step inside, one last fleeting touch that lingers longer in your mind than propriety permits. As the carriage rolls away, you glance back through the window. There he is, standing framed in the doorway, still watching your departure. Under the glow of the gas lamps, his expression softens, hopeful, open, more revealing than Victorian decorum usually allows. In the darkness of the carriage, your mother gently squeezes your hand. She doesn't need to speak, the gesture says everything. The courtship has officially begun. Tomorrow, Thomas will arrive to call on you, and you'll attend the exhibition with your mother as chaperone. It is the first step along a path that may lead to engagement, to marriage, to an entire future entwined. For tonight, though, you let yourself savor it all, the memory of his hand against yours, the way his eyes sought you across the piano, the little book of poetry tucked away secretly in your drawer. In the tightly bound world of Victorian society, these fleeting gestures, an offered hand, a shared glance, carry as much weight and excitement as the most impassioned declarations might in another age. Outside the carriage windows, London slips past. Gas lamps spill their yellow glow into the fog, breaking the night into shifting pools of light. Somewhere in the distance, a clock tolls midnight. Another day of strict manners and endless social rules has drawn to its close. Yet tomorrow already holds the promise of fresh challenges and new possibilities, with Thomas Fairchild. The next morning dawns bright and clear, an unusual blessing in London's damp winter. Perhaps even the weather itself approves of your growing connection with Thomas. You rise earlier than usual, too restless to sleep, though you remind yourself that eagerness is never something a proper Victorian lady should display. Mary assists you in dressing for the day, a walking ensemble suitable for an art exhibition. The gown is a deep burgundy wool, paired with a matching pelisse and bonnet. Elegant, fashionable, but carefully restrained, it is precisely what a young woman of good family should wear when being courted by a respectable gentleman. You look lovely, miss, Mary says softly as she secures your bonnet with a handful of well-placed pins. If you'll pardon me saying so. Thank you, Mary, you reply, studying your reflection in the mirror. The rich burgundy shade warms your complexion, and you can't help but wonder, will Thomas notice? Downstairs, you find your mother already waiting in the drawing room, dressed and composed, prepared to play her role as chaperone. A Victorian courtship allows no unsupervised moments. You and Thomas will never truly be alone until after marriage, if that is where this path leads. As you wait for him to arrive, your mother leans closer, her voice gentle but firm. Remember, she says, enthusiasm does not become a young lady. Your mother cautions gently. Mr. Fairchild must feel he is earning your regard, not that it is offered too easily. You nod obediently, though inside you can't help thinking how exhausting these endless rules are. Victorian courtship seems built on concealment, always hiding what you truly feel, always pretending indifference when your heart beats otherwise. Still, if you wish to guard your reputation and secure a good match, the game must be played by society's rules. At exactly 2 o'clock, the doorbell rings. Thomas's punctuality earns another silent mark in his favor. The butler ushers him into the drawing room, where he bows courteously to both you and your mother. Mrs. Wilson, Miss Wilson, he says with formal politeness. I trust you are both well this afternoon. Quite well, thank you, Mr. Fairchild, your mother replies. It's a fine day for an exhibition. Indeed, Thomas agrees. My carriage is waiting whenever you are ready. Outside, the Fairchild carriage gleams in the pale winter sunlight. Its polished panels bear the family crest, a visible declaration of both wealth and intention. In Victorian society, every detail sends a message, and this one is unmistakable. Thomas is serious. You and your mother take one seat while Thomas sits opposite, facing you. As the carriage jolts into motion, you feel his eyes upon you. His expression remains properly restrained, yet admiration flickers there all the same. "That color suits you very well, Miss Wilson," he says softly, then, with quick precision, adds, "As Mrs. Wilson's daughter, you have clearly inherited her excellent taste." The compliment, gracefully redirected toward your mother, avoids impropriety while still conveying his meaning. Thomas knows the rules of this intricate game, and he plays them with skill. "You're very kind, Mr. Fairchild," you reply softly, lowering your gaze with practiced modesty. The carriage rattles through London's bustling streets toward the Royal Academy. Thomas points out notable sights along the way, his remarks directed primarily to your mother, though every so often his eyes flick discreetly to you. Everything is conducted with perfect propriety. At the Academy entrance, Thomas insists on paying for the tickets. A small gesture, yet in the world of courtship it carries significance, a clear signal of his intentions. Inside, you drift together through the crowded galleries, pausing before landscapes, portraits, and grand historical canvases. The rooms are filled with fashionable visitors, many of them familiar faces from past balls and musicales. "Miss Wilson, Mrs. Wilson!" a bright voice calls. You turn to see Emma Parker approaching with her mother in tow. Of course, Emma would never pass up a chance to insert herself into any moment you share with Thomas. "Miss Parker. Mrs. Parker." Thomas greets them with a courteous bow. What a pleasant surprise. Emma wastes no time slipping neatly into place beside him. She gestures toward a nearby painting, her tone deliberately animated. "Don't you think the artist has captured the light beautifully, Mr. Fairchild? It reminds me of the view from my aunt's estate in the Lake District. You must visit sometime. The landscapes are simply breathtaking." It's a bold maneuver, an open invitation to step into her family's world. You keep your expression serene, though inwardly you resist the urge to roll your eyes at the obviousness of her ploy. Thomas, however, handles it with flawless Victorian tact. "I've no doubt the Lake District is magnificent, Miss Parker. At present, though, my business keeps me in London." His response is polite yet firm, acknowledging her without granting her the foothold she clearly hoped for. "Miss Wilson and I were just admiring this portrait. The technique is quite remarkable," Thomas remarks with perfect ease. With that, he subtly steers you and your mother toward another gallery, leaving Emma momentarily stranded and visibly displeased. Score 1 for Thomas's social finesse. As you continue through the exhibition, familiar faces emerge from your social circle. Each meeting unfolds predictably: gracious greetings, polite conversation, and the inevitable sidelong glances exchanged between you and Thomas. The message is plain to all: by escorting you here, Thomas Fairchild is making his interest known. By tomorrow, word of this outing will have spread throughout your entire social set. After an hour of both art appreciation and carefully navigated encounters, Thomas proposes a pause. The Academy boasts a modest tea room where visitors can rest and converse. He secures a table for the three of you and orders tea accompanied by small cakes. "I trust you're enjoying the exhibition, Miss Wilson," Thomas says, his tone formally polite as you wait for your refreshments. "Very much, Mr. Fairchild," you reply. "The new works by Mr. Turner are particularly striking. I thought you might appreciate them," he admits, and for just a moment, genuine pleasure slips through his carefully composed demeanor. "Your brother mentioned you take an interest in painting yourself." "Only as an amateur," you answer modestly. For a proper Victorian lady, artistic pursuits are acceptable, encouraged even, but never with professional ambition. "I would very much like to see your work someday," Thomas responds. Then, with impeccable tact, he turns to your mother. "With your permission, of course, Mrs. Wilson." Your mother inclines her head with approval. "Jane has several watercolors displayed in our drawing room. Perhaps you might view them on your next visit," your mother suggests. The implication is clear. She has just extended Thomas a direct invitation to call again. The courtship is moving forward exactly as it should. The arrival of tea briefly interrupts the conversation. You lift your cup delicately, but as you sip, your gaze catches on a man seated at a nearby table. Middle-aged, well-dressed, with a sharp, calculating look about him, something in his manner unsettles you. Thomas notices the faint crease of your brow. "Is everything quite all right, Miss Wilson?" he asks quietly. You lower your voice. "That gentleman seems to be watching us rather closely." Thomas follows your glance, his expression tightening almost imperceptibly. "Ah, Lord Barrington. Pay him no mind, Miss Wilson. But your mother, too, has seen him, Lord Barrington," she murmurs. "I hadn't realized he'd returned to London society." There's a subtle weight in her tone, enough to spark your curiosity. "You know him, Mother?" Your mother and Thomas exchange a brief, meaningful look, one that suggests there are details being withheld. "Lord Barrington has something of a reputation," your mother answers carefully. "Particularly where young ladies are concerned." Thomas clears his throat, clearly eager to redirect. "Perhaps we should continue our tour. The miniature collection in the next gallery is particularly fine." You rise with them, but before you can move on, Lord Barrington also stands. He strides toward your table with polished confidence. At once, Thomas shifts slightly forward, placing himself between you and the approaching man, a subtle yet unmistakable gesture of protection. "Fairchild," Lord Barrington greets with a shallow bow. "Mrs. Wilson. And this, I presume, is the lovely Miss Wilson I've heard so much about." His gaze lingers on you far too long, and the weight of it makes your skin prickle. This is not the measured, respectful attention of a gentleman. It carries something sharper, something predatory. Thomas's response is outwardly courteous, but the chill in his tone is unmistakable. "Lord Barrington, I hadn't realized you had returned to London." "Just arrived from the continent," Barrington replies, his eyes never leaving you. "Paris has its charms, of course, but London's young ladies are quite without equal. Perhaps Miss Wilson would do me the honor of an introduction." The request places your mother in a difficult position. By society's rules, introductions should be granted when asked. Yet Barrington's reputation makes him wholly unsuitable as a companion for an unmarried young woman. Your mother handles it with flawless Victorian tact. "I'm afraid we are just on our way out, Lord Barrington. Perhaps another time." The words are polite, but the dismissal is clear. Barrington's smile tightens at the rebuff, though he cannot press the matter without exposing his own rudeness. "Of course," he says smoothly. "Another time." As your party departs the tea room, Thomas subtly positions himself between you and Barrington, his stance protective but never improper. Once you are safely among the quieter galleries, he leans toward your mother, his voice low. "My apologies for that unpleasant encounter, Mrs. Wilson. Had I known Lord Barrington would be here, I'd have arranged a different outing." Your mother shakes her head gently. "You couldn't possibly have known, Mr. Fairchild. I'm grateful for your quick thinking." You, however, are left burning with curiosity. What exactly has Lord Barrington done to earn such a reputation? But as a proper Victorian lady, you know better than to ask directly. Scandal is acknowledged in whispers, not in open questions. You'll have to wait until you're alone with your mother before asking more about Lord Barrington. For now, the rest of the exhibition passes uneventfully, though you can't help noticing that Thomas keeps closer to your side than before. His presence feels protective, steadying. It is oddly comforting, even if the danger had been more social than physical. When the time comes to depart, Thomas escorts you and your mother back to the waiting carriage. As you settle into your seat, he speaks with quiet concern. "I trust the encounter with Lord Barrington did not spoil your enjoyment of the exhibition, Miss Wilson?" "Not in the least, Mr. Fairchild," you assure him smoothly. The art was far too remarkable to be overshadowed by a moment's awkwardness. Relief softens his expression. I'm glad to hear it. He pauses, choosing his words carefully, then adds, I feel it only right to say, Lord Barrington is not welcomed in the best houses of London. His behavior toward young ladies has, at times, been less than honorable. It is as close as a Victorian gentleman can come to a warning. The specifics are left unspoken, veiled by propriety, but the meaning is unmistakable. Keep your distance from Lord Barrington. The carriage draws up before your home. Thomas assists both you and your mother down to the pavement with his usual courtesy. At the front door, he bows formally. Thank you for a most pleasant afternoon, Mrs. Wilson. Miss Wilson. His voice lowers slightly as he continues. Might I call again tomorrow? There is a matter I would like to discuss with Mr. Wilson, if he is available. Your heart gives a sudden leap. A matter to discuss with your father. In the carefully coded language of Victorian courtship, there can be only one meaning. Thomas Fairchild intends to ask permission to pay you his formal addresses. This is the step just before a formal engagement. Your mother holds her composure with far more ease than you. I believe my husband will be at home tomorrow afternoon, Mr. Fairchild. 3 o'clock would be convenient. 3 o'clock it is, Thomas agrees. His eyes find yours, and for the briefest moment the polished mask of propriety slips, revealing something warmer, more genuine. Until tomorrow, Miss Wilson. Until tomorrow, Mr. Fairchild. You answer, your voice steady though your heart beats unsteadily beneath it. Once inside, your mother waits until the door is firmly shut before allowing herself a small, satisfied smile. Well, she says with quiet triumph, I believe Mr. Fairchild intends to speak with your father tomorrow regarding his intentions toward you. You can only nod, unwilling to trust your voice. Too much eagerness would be unseemly for a proper young lady. If your father gives his approval, your mother continues, you may expect a formal proposal very soon. We should begin discussing your trousseau. A trousseau, the carefully assembled collection of gowns, linens, and personal effects a bride brings into marriage. The Victorian version of a hope chest. Its mention leaves little doubt. Your mother is already treating the engagement as inevitable. Yes, mother, you reply, forcing composure even as excitement stirs inside you. At that moment, the front door bursts open, letting in a gust of cold air along with your brother James. His presence fills the hall with his usual energy. Jane! He exclaims, catching sight of your flushed cheeks. You look as though you've had marvelous news. Has Fairchild proposed already? James, your mother chides. Such matters are not to be discussed so bluntly. But yes, Mr. Fairchild did escort your sister and me to the Royal Academy today, and tomorrow he will be calling on your father. James breaks into a grin. Well, well. Congratulations, little sister. Fairchild is a good man. James remarks. A little on the serious side perhaps, but steady and reliable. Coming from your brother, that's quite the compliment. You remind them gently. He hasn't actually proposed yet. Though inside, your heart is already leaping with joy at the thought. That's only a matter of formality. James replies, pulling off his gloves. Everyone in town knows he's utterly devoted to you. Then, with a shift in tone, he adds, Speaking of town chatter, have you heard about Lord Barrington's return? It's caused quite the uproar at the club. At once, your mother's expression hardens. We crossed paths with him at the exhibition. Most unfortunate. James immediately looks troubled. You actually met Barrington? Did he attempt to speak with Jane? Mr. Fairchild managed the situation with complete composure. Your mother assures him. Still, perhaps you ought to enlighten your sister about Lord Barrington's reputation, using suitable discretion, of course. James gives a firm nod, clearly understanding her meaning. When your mother departs to speak with the housekeeper about dinner, James leans closer. Lord Barrington is what we men call a rake, he says without softening the words. He chases after young women with no honorable intent. He pauses before continuing. There was quite the scandal last season involving Miss Matthews. Nothing was ever proven, but her name was tarnished beyond repair. She's since been sent away to stay with family in Scotland. By Victorian standards, his honesty is shockingly blunt. Yet it was not uncommon for brothers to step outside polite conversation when warning their sisters about predatory men. I understand. You answer quietly. Thank you for confiding in me. Just keep your distance from him. James advises firmly. Though I suspect you won't need to worry for long. Once you're officially promised to Fairchild, Barrington won't dare come near you. The very thought of becoming engaged to Thomas sends another ripple of excitement racing through you. Only a few short weeks ago, you were simply another young woman navigating the routines of London society. Now you stand at the threshold of receiving a proposal from one of the city's most sought-after gentlemen. The remainder of the day drifts by in a pleasant blur of expectation. You go about your usual tasks, an hour at the piano, a little needlework, dinners shared with your family, but your thoughts constantly circle back to tomorrow and all it might bring. That evening, as Mary helps you ready yourself for bed, she notices your distracted air. An exciting day, miss? She teases gently, running the brush through your hair. Nothing out of the ordinary. Just an exhibition at the Royal Academy. You answer, keeping up the polite facade that nothing unusual is taking place. Mary's smile holds a trace of knowing amusement. Of course, miss. And will Mr. Fairchild be calling again soon? Perhaps tomorrow afternoon? You allow yourself a small admission. He has asked to speak with my father. Her eyes widen in delight. Oh, miss, that's wonderful news. He hasn't proposed yet. You remind her, though your lips betray you with an involuntary smile. It's only a matter of time. Mary assures you warmly, setting the brush aside. The entire household can see he's devoted to you. Cook is even planning to make your favorite cake for tea tomorrow in celebration. It seems everyone is awaiting the proposal as though it were a foregone conclusion. Everyone except you, who must, by the strict expectations of a proper Victorian young lady, feign astonishment and delight when the moment finally arrives. As you slip beneath the covers, sleep remains elusive. Your mind is too restless with hope and possibility. Tomorrow, Thomas will approach your father. And if your father grants his approval, and you have every reason to believe he will, then Thomas will at last be free to offer you his hand in a formal proposal. You know how it will unfold. You'll put on a proper display of surprise, pause as though weighing your decision, and then graciously accept. From that moment forward, you will be engaged. In Victorian society, such an agreement carries enormous weight. Unlike the casual promises exchanged in modern times, an engagement here is nearly binding. To break it would invite scandal, and the damage to a woman's reputation could be lasting. Once you accept Thomas's offer, your future is essentially sealed, unless, of course, something shocking or disgraceful were to surface. You reflect on all you know of Thomas Fairchild. He is undeniably handsome, well-educated, and comes from a family of solid means. His manners are refined, his behavior consistently respectful, and he has always shown a genuine interest in your thoughts and opinions. By the measure of Victorian standards, he is practically flawless. And yet, the lingering question of love lingers in your heart. In your world, passionate love is often regarded with suspicion, even mistrust, as a foundation for marriage. Society insists that compatibility, mutual respect, shared values, and similar social standing matter far more. If love appears at all, it is expected to blossom gradually within the safety of marriage, not before it. Still, you can't suppress the hope that what stirs in your chest, the quickening of your pulse when Thomas enters a room, the quiet warmth that spreads through you when his gaze finds yours, might signal the beginnings of something richer and more profound than mere suitability. Beyond your window, The street lies bathed in the soft yellow glow of gas lamps. A dog barks somewhere in the distance. A carriage rattles across the cobblestones, wheels striking against the uneven stones. And across the city, in his family's grand townhouse, Thomas Fairchild may well be lying awake too, turning over the same thoughts in his mind, rehearsing the very question he intends to place before your father tomorrow. Morning arrives far too quickly, and yet not quickly enough to ease your restless anticipation. You take special care in your appearance, choosing a pale blue morning dress. Thomas once remarked how much he admired the color. Mary arranges your hair in a style that flatters your face, softening your features while still keeping everything appropriately modest and restrained. Your father, unusually, has chosen to work from home today. The very fact confirms what you already know. He is expecting Thomas's visit. Though he sits in his study, apparently immersed in paperwork, the details give him away. He has selected his finest waistcoat and placed a fresh bloom neatly in his buttonhole. Luncheon passes under a veil of unspoken tension. No one dares mention Thomas, yet his presence lingers invisibly around the table, making ordinary conversation feel strained. Your mother busies herself with many discussions alongside the housekeeper. Your father buries himself behind his newspaper, and you merely toy with the food on your plate, unable to manage more than a bite. At precisely 5 minutes before 3, you and your mother withdraw to the drawing room. Etiquette demands that you appear calm and pleasantly occupied when Thomas arrives, not like a young lady waiting anxiously by the door. You pick up your needlework, though your hands tremble too much to manage neat stitches. Beside you, your mother sits with a book open, her eyes not on the page but on you, her expression a mixture of sympathy and eager expectation. The clock strikes the hour. At once, the doorbell rings. You hear the steady tread of the butler crossing the hall, followed by the low exchange of voices. Then the moment comes. Thomas is not brought into the drawing room, but directed to your father's study. That alone confirms it. He has come to ask formally for permission to court you. And now, the most difficult task falls upon you, waiting. A well-bred Victorian lady does not linger by keyholes or press her ear to closed doors, no matter how fiercely curiosity burns inside her. And so you sit dutifully with your needlework, pretending that your entire future is not being weighed and measured just one room away. 10 minutes drag past. Then 15. Your stitching, never steady to begin with, becomes more hopelessly uneven with each anxious moment. At last your mother abandons the charade of reading altogether, her gaze fixed on the clock's relentless ticking. Finally, after what feels like an eternity, though it cannot be more than 20 minutes, the study door opens. You hear your father's voice, followed by Thomas's deeper tones. Footsteps advance toward the drawing room. Your father enters first, his expression deliberately unreadable, as though he means to keep you guessing. Behind him comes Thomas, immaculate as always, yet with a nervousness about him you've never witnessed before. "My dear," your father says to your mother, "Mr. Fairchild has a matter he wishes to discuss with Jane. Perhaps we might grant them a few private moments." Your mother arches a brow in clear surprise. Such an allowance is distinctly out of the ordinary. Young men and women are not left alone together, even under their own roof. But your father gives a small, steady nod of reassurance, and after the briefest pause, she rises. "We shall be in the morning room," she declares. Her eyes flick to Thomas with unmistakable emphasis. "Conduct yourself with honor, or you will answer for it." And then, astonishingly, you find yourself alone with Thomas Fairchild. Not truly alone. The drawing room door remains open, and you are well aware your parents are just within hearing distance. Still, this is as close to privacy as the rigid rules of propriety will allow. Thomas positions himself by the fireplace, and for the first time since you've known him, there is a flicker of uncertainty in his manner. The polished composure Thomas always carries has slipped, and for once, you glimpse raw feeling beneath the surface. "Miss Wilson," he begins, then falters. Jane! He corrects himself, and the sound of your given name on his lips, for the very first time, sends a shiver through you. I have spoken with your father, he continues, and he has graciously granted me his blessing to address you in this way. Your heart is pounding so fiercely you half wonder if he can hear it. This is the moment, the one every Victorian young lady is carefully taught to anticipate from girlhood. Thomas takes a measured step closer, still holding a respectful distance. His voice is steady, yet charged with sincerity. From the day we first met, I was struck by your intelligence, your grace, and your kindness. These weeks together have only deepened both my admiration and my affection. He hesitates, drawing in a breath as though steadying himself. In that pause, he is no longer the perfectly mannered gentleman society expects him to be, but simply a man laying his feelings bare. What I am attempting to say, though I fear I do it clumsily, is that I hold you in the highest esteem and regard. His voice softens. Jane Wilson, would you do me the very great honor of accepting my hand in marriage? The words linger in the air between you, heavy with meaning. This is the moment you've been anticipating for weeks. And yet, faced with it, you feel genuinely overcome. A proper young lady is expected to appear astonished, even overwhelmed by such a declaration. But this reaction is not entirely an act. Something in the vulnerability of his expression, in the faint tremor running through his otherwise steady voice, moves you deeply. Mr. Fairchild, you begin, then stop, correcting yourself softly. Thomas, I am profoundly honored by your proposal. You pause, not to heighten the suspense, but because emotion grips your throat, making the words almost too difficult to speak. This is not how the Victorian script is meant to play out. You are supposed to remain composed, serene, modestly pleased, but never openly passionate. Yet the words escape you, soft but steady. Nothing would make me happier than to accept. In an instant, Thomas's expression changes. The careful restraint he always maintains in public dissolves, replaced by a joy so radiant it nearly steals your breath. For a fleeting moment, you see past the polished veneer of the gentleman society demands, and glimpse the man beneath, a man of deep and carefully contained feeling. Jane, he breathes, your name carrying the tenderness of a caress. You have made me the happiest of men. He instinctively steps closer, then halts, the ever-present weight of propriety reasserting itself. Even now, with an engagement binding you together, Victorian decorum forbids any real physical intimacy. At most, a hand-clasp might be permitted, and even that would be daring. May I? He asks gently, extending his hand. You place yours into his, and the warmth of his skin against your own feels almost startling. Such a simple gesture, and yet in your carefully chaperoned world, it carries a shocking intimacy. I've brought something for you, Thomas says, releasing your hand only long enough to reach into the pocket of his waistcoat. He draws out a small velvet box and opens it to reveal a ring. It belonged to my grandmother, he explains softly. Inside, nestled in the dark velvet, gleams a sapphire of deep blue, encircled by a cluster of tiny diamonds, all set in rich gold. It is not ostentatious by modern standards, but it shines with elegance and quiet value. It's beautiful, you whisper, as he takes your hand once more and slides the ring onto your finger. The weight of it feels unfamiliar, yet strangely comforting. More than jewelry, it is a symbol, visible proof of your new status. Without a word, the ring will announce to the world what has just been decided: you are engaged. The tender moment is swiftly broken by the sound of approaching footsteps. Your parents, having allowed you as much privacy as propriety will tolerate, re-enter the drawing room. At once, Thomas steps back to a proper distance, though his gaze lingers on you with unmistakable warmth. Well? Your father asks, his eyes shifting between the two of you. Miss Wilson has graciously done me the great honor of accepting my proposal, sir, Thomas replies with formal composure. Your mother's face brightens instantly, her joy unrestrained. How wonderful! We must have champagne to celebrate. The butler is summoned, crystal glasses are filled, and toasts are raised in honor of the newly engaged couple. Yet through all the well wishes and clinking glasses, you find yourself moving in a kind of haze. The rapid pace of a Victorian courtship is dizzying. Only a few short weeks ago, Thomas was little more than a pleasant acquaintance. Now he is your fiancé, your promised husband. Once the initial cheer subsides, your father clears his throat. We ought to discuss dates, he begins. And naturally, the matter of settlements. Ah, yes, the practical side of Victorian matrimony. For all its romance, marriage is just as much a financial contract as it is a union of hearts. My solicitor has already drawn up some preliminary papers, Thomas says, his voice shifting into a tone of steady business. I would be happy to review them with you tomorrow, sir. Excellent. Your father approves, clearly satisfied. And regarding the wedding date, Thomas continues thoughtfully, I was considering perhaps 3 months' time, sufficient for proper arrangements, but not so long a delay as to become burdensome. Is there a faint trace of impatience in his voice? A quiet eagerness that suggests he can hardly wait to begin your life together? The idea sends a shiver of delight through you. 3 months feels entirely suitable. Your mother agrees. It allows ample time for a proper trousseau to be prepared, but not so long that whispers might start. In Victorian society, engagements are bound by strict rules, too brief, and people might suspect impropriety or necessity, too lengthy, and rumors of reluctance or hidden obstacles begin to circulate. 3 months strikes the perfect balance. That evening, Thomas remains for dinner, his first meal in your home as your official fiancé. Conversation flows with an ease and warmth you've never quite felt before. Plans are shared, dates proposed, futures quietly imagined. And throughout it all, you notice Thomas's eyes often drifting back to you, his expression filled with something like wonder, as though he cannot quite believe his good fortune. When at last he prepares to leave, he bows over your hand. This time, he lingers a heartbeat longer than propriety allows. Until tomorrow, Jane, he murmurs, his voice low and warm. Until tomorrow, Thomas, you reply, savoring the unfamiliar sweetness of his given name upon your lips. The weeks that follow slip by in a whirlwind of preparation. Your engagement is announced in the newspapers, and soon a steady stream of congratulatory visits and calling cards arrive at the house. Your mother and Mrs. Fairchild meet often, deep in discussion over the wedding breakfast and countless other details. Meanwhile, your own days fill with fittings and endless planning for your trousseau, the vast wardrobe every bride is expected to bring into marriage. Morning dresses, afternoon ensembles, evening gowns, walking costumes, riding habits, night dresses and dressing gowns, layers of undergarments, gloves, bonnets, shoes, shawls, an entire year's worth of attire, each piece carefully chosen to ensure that a Victorian wife enters her new household impeccably prepared. And then, of course, there's your wedding dress, the single most important gown you will ever wear. Pure white, as fashion dictates, thanks to Queen Victoria's choice when she wed Prince Albert. The fabric is silk and lace in generous yards, the train long enough to inspire admiration, though never so extravagant as to appear vain. A veil of fine Brussels lace will fall gracefully over your shoulders, paired with white satin slippers. Every detail has been chosen with the utmost care, nothing left to chance. Your hope chest grows heavy with household linens, sheets, tablecloths, napkins, handkerchiefs, many of which you embroidered yourself over the years, long before you even knew whose name you would one day take. All of it has led to this moment. Between the endless rounds of preparation, you do see Thomas often, though never unaccompanied. Victorian propriety allows no exceptions. You stroll together through the park with your mother trailing a discreet distance behind. You attend dinners and balls side by side, yet always in full view of society's watchful eyes. Letters become your only true privacy. In those carefully written pages, you come to know Thomas more deeply than public settings ever allowed. He writes of the future he envisions for the two of you, of his admiration for your mind, and of his determination to be a husband worthy of you. Nothing in his words is improper. Every sentence could safely be read aloud without causing offense. But the sincerity, the growing warmth between the lines, makes them precious to you. 2 weeks before the wedding, the Fairchilds host a dinner party bringing both families together. It is an evening for introductions, a polite weighing and measuring of character. Your aunts, uncles, and cousins take the measure of Thomas's kin, while his extended family quietly does the same with yours. The dinner proves to be an undeniable success. Both families present themselves as polished, prosperous, and respectable. No awkward behavior or questionable relations to cast a shadow over the union. My cousin William seems to have caught your cousin Emily's eye, Thomas murmurs to you during a brief lull in conversation, when the rest of the table is distracted. Perhaps another match is beginning to form. You follow his glance and catch sight of Emily laughing at something William has said, her cheeks glowing. Perhaps, you agree softly, they would make a fine pair. Not as fine as we do, Thomas replies, his voice low and warm. Such a simple remark, yet it sends a rush of color to your cheeks. Even now, weeks into your engagement, his focused attention has the power to unsettle you. A proper young lady should never display such obvious signs of fluster, but Thomas seems far more delighted than disapproving of your blush. The final week before the wedding passes in a whirl of activity. Last-minute arrangements consume every hour. In the drawing room, your wedding gifts are displayed for all to admire: gleaming silver services, delicate crystal decanters, fine china sets, ornate clocks, and vases that sparkle in the lamplight. Guests arrive in a steady stream, offering congratulations once more and praising the tokens of your future household. On the eve of the ceremony, your mother comes quietly into your bedroom, where Mary is brushing your hair for the last time beneath this familiar roof. Tomorrow you will leave it behind, moving into the Fairchild townhouse, where you and Thomas will share your own suite of rooms. I wanted to have a word with you, your mother says gently, dismissing Mary with a small nod. Your heart skips. You know what is coming. This is it, the Victorian version of the talk. Most young women are kept so carefully shielded from such matters that they enter marriage with only the vaguest understanding of what awaits them on their wedding night. But your mother, more progressive than many of her peers, has always believed a daughter should be prepared, at least a little. Marriage brings physical intimacies, your mother begins, her voice carrying the careful awkwardness of someone treading unfamiliar ground. It is a wife's duty to yield to her husband's needs. At first, it may be uncomfortable, but a lady bears it with dignity. It is hardly the most reassuring of explanations, but perfectly in line with prevailing Victorian views. Women are not expected to find pleasure in such things. That would be considered improper, even scandalous. Instead, they are taught to accept physical intimacy as a marital duty, endured for the sake of children and the continuation of family lines. The most important matter, my dear, your mother continues more firmly, is to build a harmonious household. Always be attentive to Thomas's comfort. Never contradict him in public. Your task is to maintain a serene, welcoming atmosphere where he may find rest from the burdens of business. This guidance echoes the Victorian ideal of separate spheres, men belonging to the world of commerce, politics, and public life, women to the sanctuary of home and family. A wife's role is to create peace within those private walls, to oversee the household with quiet efficiency, and to be her husband's source of calm. I believe you and Thomas will be very happy, your mother finishes, patting your hand with gentle affection. He strikes me as a good and considerate man, and it is plain to anyone that he cherishes you. Thank you, mother, you reply softly, touched by her concern, even if her words leave you yearning for something deeper. Still, you allow yourself a small smile. I believe we will be happy, too. That night, sleep eludes you. Your mind brims with thoughts of what tomorrow will bring, the end of your life as Miss Jane Wilson, and the beginning of your new identity as Mrs. Thomas Fairchild. Morning comes at last, bright and cloudless, as though the heavens themselves have blessed the day. At 11 o'clock, in St. George's Church at Hanover Square, the most fashionable setting for society weddings, you will stand before the altar to be joined to Thomas. You are dressed with the utmost care, each layer chosen and placed with precision. First come the finest undergarments from your trousseau, followed by the gown itself, a vision in white, its fitted bodice giving way to a sweeping skirt. The delicate veil is arranged over your carefully coiffed hair, its lace falling like mist around your shoulders. "You look beautiful, miss," Mary whispers, her eyes brimming with tears. She quickly begs your pardon, but her sincerity is unmistakable. "Thank you, Mary," you answer, your own voice touched with emotion. She has been by your side for years, guiding you through the intricacies of Victorian womanhood. "I shall miss you. You'll have your own lady's maid at the Fairchilds'," Mary reminds you gently. "Mrs. Fairchild has already engaged someone with experience serving married ladies." It is yet another reminder of the changes awaiting you. Your very household staff, the small comforts of familiarity, will no longer be the same. The carriage ride to the church passes in a blur of sights and sounds you hardly register. When you arrive, your father, resplendent in his formal morning attire, helps you down and offers his arm with quiet pride. Together you step into the church. The air is thick with the fragrance of fresh flowers. Fine fabrics rustle as guests rise to their feet, all eyes turning toward you. And there, waiting at the altar, is Thomas, more handsome than you have ever seen him in his wedding clothes. His gaze locks on you, filled with such unguarded admiration that you nearly falter mid-step. Never in your life has anyone looked at you in quite that way. The ceremony unfolds in the dignified solemnity tradition demands. In a clear, steady voice, you speak your vows, to love, to honor, and to obey. Thomas slides a plain gold band onto your finger, joining the sapphire engagement ring already there. The vicar's words seal it. You are now husband and wife. Thomas is permitted at last to lift your veil and press a gentle kiss to your cheek, the first time his lips have touched your skin. And just like that, with a few solemn words and a simple kiss, your life has irrevocably changed. You are married. Mrs. Thomas Fairchild. The name itself feels like a new identity, a new station, the first step into an entirely different life. The wedding breakfast that follows is elegant yet carefully restrained. Your parents have spent generously, but not lavishly, always mindful of the delicate Victorian balance between refinement and vulgar display. Too much extravagance, after all, is considered poor taste. Champagne flows into tall glasses, delicate dishes are served on gleaming china, and speeches ripple with warmth and good humor. You sit at the head table beside Thomas, still half dazed from the morning's ceremony, the weight of your vows and the ring on your hand sinking in slowly. "Are you happy, Jane?" Thomas leans toward you, his voice pitched low during a moment when the attention of the room is fixed on the cutting of the cake. "Very happy," you answer softly, and you mean it. Despite the whirlwind pace of Victorian courtship, despite the rigid social codes that have governed every interaction, you find yourself caring for this man deeply. Perhaps it is even love, though propriety keeps that word unspoken. After the festivities, you retire to change out of your wedding gown into a smart traveling ensemble, tailored for practicality and elegance. The plans are simple by modern measure: 2 weeks at the Fairchild family's estate in Kent. A modest honeymoon by later standards, but entirely typical for the time. The farewells are heartfelt, though carefully controlled. Excessive displays of emotion would be deemed unseemly. Your mother holds you in a brief embrace. Her eyes, bright though unshed tears, remain private. Your father clasps Thomas's hand firmly and kisses your cheek with solemn pride. And then, at last, you are stepping into the carriage, husband and wife, alone together for the first time without chaperones or listening ears. Thomas reaches for your hand, his thumb brushing lightly across your palm, a touch that feels both tender and daring. "Well, Mrs. Fairchild," he says, his voice rich with affection and just a hint of wonder. "Shall we begin our adventure?" Thomas asks, his voice warm with anticipation. You smile, truly smile, free of the careful restraint society so often demands. "Yes," you reply simply. The carriage lurches forward, carrying you into your new life. Behind you, guests scatter rice and petals across the street, blessings for luck and fertility. Before you stretches the uncharted territory of marriage, with its duties, its joys, and its intimate discoveries. Victorian society sets out a clear path for wives, just as it does for maidens. You will be expected to manage a household with efficiency, supervise servants, pay and receive social calls, engage in charitable endeavors befitting your station, and, God willing, one day become a mother. Your life will remain bound by propriety and expectation. And yet, when Thomas's fingers lace with yours, when his gaze meets yours with warmth and steady promise, you dare to believe that within those boundaries, the two of you might still carve out something more. A union not only of convenience or suitability, but of true affection and mutual respect. The carriage rattles over London's cobbled streets, heading steadily toward the Kent Road. Thomas points out familiar sights along the way, his tone animated and lively, so different from his usual polished reserve. You find yourself answering with your own observations, laughing more freely than you ever could under a chaperone's eye. It is a small but exhilarating taste of freedom. By the time the city gives way to open countryside, the sun is already slipping low. The fields and hedgerows of Kent glow with golden light, long shadows stretching across the rolling hills. The air is sweet with the scent of spring blossoms, a tranquil balm after the relentless bustle of London. "Almost home," Thomas says as the carriage turns onto a tree-lined drive. Then, with a small smile, he adds, "Well, one of our homes. We'll divide our time between London and here, if that suits you." "It suits me very well," you assure him, touched by the fact that he asks your opinion at all. Many Victorian husbands simply dictate such matters, never thinking to consult their wives. The house soon comes into view. It is not an imposing manor, but a gracious red-brick country house with white-trimmed windows and an air of quiet dignity. Warm lights gleam through the windows, glowing like beacons in the deepening dusk. A small staff of servants waits by the entrance, ready to greet the new master and mistress. As the carriage rolls to a halt, Thomas gives your hand a gentle squeeze. "Welcome home, Jane." In that moment, despite all the rigid rules of Victorian society, despite the swift courtship and the uncertainties that still lie ahead, you feel an undeniable sense of rightness. This man, this life, is where you belong. Together, you will build something lasting. The butler opens the carriage door, and Thomas steps down first. Turning back, he extends his hands to you. His grip is firm and steady as he lifts you from the carriage, his touch lingering just long enough for you to feel the strength and warmth of him. For a brief instant, you stand very near to one another in the golden evening light, free at last from the ever-present chaperones of your courtship. "Shall we?" Thomas asks, offering you his arm. You rest your hand lightly on it, feeling the solid warmth of him beneath the fine wool of his coat. "Yes," you reply softly. "Let's go home." Together you ascend the stone steps toward your new life, leaving behind the constraints of maidenhood and stepping fully into the intricate, demanding, but promising world of Victorian marriage. There will be new rules to learn, new duties to master, and expectations to uphold. Yet you will face them side by side, discovering your own happiness within the framework society has so carefully constructed around you. Night settles softly over the Kent countryside, the last light fading as stars prick the velvet sky one by one. Hand in hand, you and Thomas step across the threshold of your new home, leaving behind the world of courtship and stepping fully into marriage. The future stretches out before you, uncertain, yes, but filled with possibility and promise. And so, with that thought warming your heart, you close your eyes and let sleep take you, the echoes of Victorian London dissolving into dreams.